Deck builders have completely taken over indie gaming, and 2026 is proving it beyond any doubt. What started as a niche mechanic borrowed from tabletop games has exploded into one of the most creative, addictive, and downright genius genres in the entire indie scene. Talespinner is about to ruin every other roguelike for you. Developed by Flashcat Games and published by Quali, this one drops you into a world steeped in Japanese folklore where you're not just fighting through encounters, you're the storyteller, shaping how the legend unfolds. Every choice, every card you slot into your deck bends the narrative in a different direction. 3 playable heroes, each with their own card pool and mechanics, mean your story changes wildly depending on who you pick. The yokai design here is genuinely gorgeous. Over 50 enemy types and 16 bosses drawn straight from mythology, each with their own quirks that force you to rethink your strategy mid-run. With 8 biomes, ranging from haunted villages to desolate plains, no 2 playthroughs are going to look the same. With over 200 battle cards and heavy Slay the Spire influence, Talespinner isn't just riding the deck builder wave, it's carving its own mythological corner of it. Bingle Bingle. Belatro proved that reinventing a classic casino game as a roguelike deck builder could take over the entire genre, and Bingle Bingle takes that same energy and slaps it onto the roulette wheel. Developed and published by Knitting Games, this is a roulette-building game, and once you dig into it, that label makes total sense. You're not just spinning for luck here, you're literally reshaping the wheel itself. Turn numbers into duplicates, freeze pockets, install portals, even devour pockets outright to bend the odds entirely in your favor. Layer that on top of over 200 badges, unique balls, bets, and tokens, and you've got a combo system that rivals the deepest deck builders out there. Every run forces you to rethink your entire strategy from scratch. Do you go all in on a stacked color synergy, or spread your bets thin and let chaos work in your favor? Chip totals can balloon into the millions, even billions when your build finally clicks, and that dopamine hit is exactly what keeps players coming back for one more spin. Prime Monster. If you thought politics couldn't get any more absurd, Cavalier Game Studios decided to throw literal monsters into the mix, and somehow, it's one of the most cathartic deck builders you'll play all year. Set in the Fractured Kingdom, an alternate world where humanity's gone, and vampires, orcs, goblins, and ghouls now run the government, Prime Monster puts you in charge of clawing your way to the top job through pure political chaos. The core loop revolves around parliamentary debates, where you draw cards each turn to either boost your own votes or tank the opposition's, all while a judge called the Shrieker watches for cheating, which, yes, you're absolutely encouraged to try anyway. Outside the debate floor, you're managing scandals, bribes, and increasingly ridiculous policy decisions, each one nudging your monster's reputation somewhere between beloved and despised. 3 playable monsters, each with a distinct faction and deck-building style, keep every run feeling fresh. RACCOIN, Coin Pusher Roguelike. Remember spending your entire allowance at the arcade trying to get that coin pusher machine to finally tip? Dorakun, a tiny 3-person studio out of Shanghai, took that exact nostalgic itch and turned it into one of the most unexpectedly addictive roguelike deck builder of 2026. RACCOIN swaps cards for coins, but make no mistake, this is a deck builder through and through, and the depth here is honestly shocking for a game about flicking little metal discs. You're launching coins onto a moving platform, watching physics do the rest as everything gets pushed toward the edge. But it's the special coins that turn this into a genuine strategy game. Combine a seed coin with a water coin to literally grow a money tree in your machine. Drop a cat coin to hunt down rat coins for bonus tickets. Need chaos? A TNT coin blows everything forward at once. With over 150 unique chips and multiple playable characters, including a raccoon manager obsessed with math-based combos, the potential here is deceptively massive. Forsaken Lands. Deck builders are famously a solo genre, one player, one deck, one lonely climb to the top. Luniski Studio decided to break that mold entirely with Forsaken Lands, a co-op roguelite deck builder that lets up to 3 players team up, each commanding their own hero and their own individual deck. You're not sharing a single pile of cards here. Each hero brings a completely separate toolkit, meaning you and your squad need to actually communicate and cover each other's other's weaknesses to survive. With 6 heroes at launch, each packing over 50 hero-specific cards on top of a shared neutral pool, the deck-building possibilities scale up fast once you factor in real synergy between different players' builds. The game splits into 2 modes. Story mode gives you a guided narrative campaign built around your chosen trio's relationships and backstories, while Dreams mode throws you into a fully procedural roguelite loop with shifting routes, events, and battle modifiers that keep any single solved strategy from dominating. Last Bullet. Developed by Toxic Bite Games as their first roguelite project, Last Bullet takes deck building and swaps the deck for something you'd never expect: a literal barrel. Instead of playing cards from your hand, you're slotting bullets directly into a gun, and the order you load them in matters just as much as which ones you pick. Chain the right combination together, and you get devastating screen-clearing effects. Chain the wrong ones, and you're reloading a dud. The barrel building mechanic gives this a genuinely fresh feel compared to your typical card-based deck builder. Every bullet you earn from taking down enemies has its own unique behavior, and slotting them next to the right neighbors is where the real strategy kicks in. With over 100 bullets and trinkets to discover, the combo potential spirals fast, letting you build absurd chain reactions where one shot triggers explosions, piercing effects, or entire cascades of follow-up damage. It's turn-based, so there's real room to plan your barrel loadout instead of just reacting on instinct, which gives it a more tactical, puzzle-like rhythm than most bullet-focused roguelites. Turnbound. If you've ever looked at the case from Resident Evil 4 and thought, this deserves to be its own game, developer 1TK went ahead and built exactly that, then fused it with an auto-battler and a healthy dose of gothic horror. Turnbound casts you as a wandering spirit trapped inside a haunted board game, forced to battle a cast of trapped souls, while a smug cat watches from the sidelines. The hook here is the inventory itself. You're not just equipping gear, you're arranging weapons and trinkets on a grid where placement actually matters, triggering cascading synergies between neighboring items during combat. It's less deck build and hope, and more spatial puzzle meets strategic theory crafting, which gives Turnbound a genuinely distinct identity in a genre that's starting to feel crowded. The asynchronous PvP is the real standout feature though. Instead of live matches, you're battling saved builds from real players, letting you study replays and refine your loadout at your own pace, instead of getting steamrolled in real time. Archon Soul. Dice-based roguelikes always run into the same problem. You can build the perfect strategy, then a bad roll wrecks your whole run. Polygriff, a debut studio led by a former chef turned game developer, set out to fix exactly that with Archon Soul, and the solution is brilliant. Let players fully customize their dice instead of leaving everything to chance. Swap faces, slot in runes, change the entire dice body. Suddenly, you're not hoping for good luck, you're engineering it. With over 40 runes and 30 dice bodies in play, you're looking at more than 65,000 possible dice combinations, which is an absurd amount of build variety for a genre that usually caps out at deck synergies alone. Layer that on top of over 200 spells split across 4 playable mages, the Gaiamancer, Pyromancer, Thawmancer, and a secret 4th character, and the combo potential between your spells, runes, and dice gets genuinely deep. It's clearly inspired by Slay the Spire and Dicey Dungeons, but by handing players real control over the dice themselves, Archon Soul carves its own identity rather than just riding on those influences. Blackjacket. Blackjack has been sitting right there this whole time, waiting for someone to Balatrify it, and Mipumi Games finally took the swing. Published by Skystone Games, whose president literally co-created Diablo, so hell is familiar territory, Blackjacket traps you in the afterlife, where the only way out is beating restless souls at their own twisted card table. And this is very much not a straightforward game of 21. Here's the twist that makes it click. You're not chasing blackjack itself. you're chasing coins. A clean 19 that keeps your pockets full beats a greedy 21 that leaves you broke, which completely reframes how you approach every hand. You'll pick 3 suits out of 8 at the start of each run, each granting a different wrinkle. Clubs let you drain and swap your opponent's cards. Diamonds manipulate your draw order. Hearts weaponize negative value cards to sabotage the enemy's plays. Layer in artifacts, curses, and enemy-inflicted card afflictions that corrupt your deck over time, and suddenly, removal becomes just as important as building your combo engine. Summoner's Gambit. Auto-battlers and roguelike deck builders have been circling each other for years, and Summoner's Gambit finally slams the two together in a way that feels genuinely fresh. You're playing as a summoner, acquiring cards and creatures through adventure, building out a deck that fuels your battle formation. Where you place each creature directly affects attack priority and skill range, which turns every duel into a spatial puzzle layered on top of your deck building choices. That's the real hook. It's not enough to just draft strong cards. You need to think about how your formation interacts as a whole unit. Numerical bonuses and tactical synergies between creatures reward players who plan their board like a chess match rather than just stacking individually powerful pieces. Add in unique systems like energy overflow and the wonderfully named cheat the odds mechanic, and you get combat encounters that constantly force you to weigh risk against reward. The gothic, Lovecraftian art direction gives the whole thing a moody, atmospheric edge that stands out from the usual pastel fantasy deck builder aesthetic too. Backdraft. Most roguelike deck builders send you off to fight AI monsters. Backdraft says, forget that. Let's throw 2 players into the ring instead. This is a hero versus hero board control game where drafting your deck matters just as much as reading the battlefield in real time. Every run starts by pairing a hero with a companion, and that combo decides your entire elemental identity going forward. Your hero brings a unique power. Your companion unlocks a whole second card pool, and together they shape what kind of deck you're building toward. With 12 heroes, 6 elements, and over 250 cards to draft across your run, the sheer number of viable pairings gives Backdraft serious build variety right out the gate. But the real tension comes from the actual combat decisions. Do you clear the board this turn, hunker down defensively, or go straight for the rival hero's face? Summoning minions and stacking enchantments lets you chain attacks into genuinely devastating combos. And because you're playing against another thinking opponent rather than a scripted AI, every match forces real adaptation instead of memorized patterns. Handmancers. Rock, paper, scissors is the simplest game on earth, and somehow 58 Blades turned it into a genuinely deep, first-person roguelite deck builder that took over 3 years to build. Instead of watching cards get slammed onto a table from above, Handmancers puts you directly in the duelist's shoes, throwing hand signs at grotesque enemies in real tactical showdowns where rock, paper, and scissors form the entire foundation of combat. That premise sounds almost too simple, but the customization underneath is where it gets its teeth. Every card can carry up to 3 modifiers through gems, letting you twist a basic hand gesture into something closer to a screen-shaking nuke. Pick a faction and lean into your playstyle. Scissors for burst damage, rock for tanky defense, paper for stacking buffs, and layer artifacts on top for synergies that can completely warp how a fight plays out. There's also a stamina-style mechanic tied to your hands themselves. Throw too many powerful plays, and you'll rack up cramps that limit your options until you recover, which adds a genuinely clever risk-reward layer most deck builders don't touch. Beastro. Just when you thought deck builders had explored every possible angle, Timberline Studio flips the entire formula upside down with Beastro. In most deck builders, combat produces the rewards that build your deck. Here, it's completely reversed. Cooking builds your deck, and combat is just where you find out if your meal planning actually worked. You're playing as Penko, a cat running a restaurant in the cozy village of Palo Pori, farming and foraging ingredients through mini-games that ramp up in complexity as you progress. The genius twist is that every every ingredient you cook translates directly into a card tied to one of 5 flavors: salty, bitter, sweet, sour, and umami, that then equips your adventurer caretakers before they head out to battle monsters in charming, turn-based puppet theater fights built around tricky mechanics rather than typical combo chaining. Plan a 2-day meal around bitter, defensive ingredients, and your caretaker walks into battle as an unshakable tank. Get the flavor balance wrong, and you'll feel it immediately in combat. Into the Crypt. Deck builders have almost always been a top-down, watch-from-a-distance kind of genre. Megaglobe Studios, a solo Toronto developer, decided to drag the whole thing into first-person 3D instead, and the result is genuinely disorienting in the best way. In Into the Crypt, cards aren't just abstract combat tools. You're physically using them to unlock doors, crack open chests, and interact with a procedurally generated dungeon that's actively trying to kill you. That first-person immersion changes the feel of everything. It's not just play a card, watch a number go down. You're navigating branching floors packed with minions, elites, bosses, and dozens of environmental events, all while managing a deck built from over 300 unique cards and dozens of stackable status effects. The class design carries a ton of that strategic weight. The Berserker channels self-inflicted damage into devastating fury and bleed synergies. The Alchemist plays a slower, potion brewing game built on preparation, and the Druid summons 2 named allies to fight alongside you, fundamentally changing your combat rhythm depending on who you pick. 2 fights in 2 tight spaces. If you played the original Fights in Tight Spaces, you already know exactly why Agent 11's return matters. Ground Shatter's cult classic turned turn-based card combat into something that felt like a John Wick fight scene playing out in slow motion. And this true sequel doesn't just refine that formula, it blows it wide open with co-op for the very first time. The core DNA is still here. Every card is a physical action, every movement matters, and positioning in tight, cramped environments is the real skill test, rather than raw stat scaling. What's new is a polymorphic card system, where your cards can transform into more powerful variants mid-fight, plus the ability to grab weapons straight from the environment, disarm enemies, and shift between combat stances on the fly. It's the same make the world your weapon philosophy the original nailed, just with significantly more depth packed into every single turn. And now you can bring a friend along, teaming up as fellow Section 11 agents to take down entire crime syndicates together. Shroom and Gloom. Devolver Digital has a real soft spot for weird, and Shroom and Gloom, developed by Cape Town's Team Laserbeam, might be their most delightfully strange signing yet. It's a first-person roguelike that invented its own subgenre entirely, the double deck builder, and once you see it in action, that made-up label actually makes perfect sense. You're managing 2 completely separate decks here. One is your exploration deck, built from cards that let you smash through environmental puzzles, unlock hidden areas, and physically interact with a hand-drawn fungal dungeon rendered in 3D. The other is your combat deck, which handles the actual fighting against a nightmarish cast of mushroom monsters, stabbing, skewering, roasting, and eating your enemies to restore health. The real hook, though, is how infinitely modifiable your cards are. You're not just collecting new cards, you're growing your existing ones, transforming low-level starting cards into overpowered attacks, or mutating rare cards into full-blown super weapons as you push deeper into the game's ominously named Gloom. Echo Generation 2. Coco Cucumber's original Echo Generation swept up Best Indie Game, Best Narrative, and Best Soundtrack honors with its nostalgic voxel world charm, so expectations for a sequel were sky high. And this time, the studio's gone full deck building. Echo Generation 2 puts you in the shoes of Jack, an ordinary dad whose family vacation spirals into a full-blown cosmic mystery, involving hidden experiments, impossible realities, and a whole new dimension to escape from. The deck building here is genuinely well integrated, rather than bolted on. Build your party from 6 distinct heroes, each with their own unique cards, abilities, and playstyle. Then, form a trio and start hunting for synergies between characters in real combat. A strategic stance system adds real tactical weight. Matching symbols to break enemy defenses opens windows for devastating combos, which turns positioning and timing into just as important a skill as raw deck power. With over 150 cards to collect and refine, plus skill trees and badge upgrades layered on top, there's plenty of room to reshape each hero to fit your preferred approach. Fogpiercer. Snowpiercer meets Slay the Spire is exactly the kind of pitch that makes indie fans sit up straight, and Mad Cookie Studio, a Slovakia-based team, delivers on that promise beautifully. Published by Hooded Horse, the same publisher behind Manor Lords, Fogpiercer drops you into a post-apocalyptic world consumed by a deadly encroaching fog, where your only hope is piloting a train through bandit-infested territory in search of refuge. Here's the twist that makes Fogpiercer stand out from the deck builder crowd. Your train carriages are your deck, physically positioned on a grid, and where you place them matters just as much as which cards you hold. Cards push, pull, and position both your forces and your enemies, creating opportunities for genuinely explosive chain reactions when you line up the right hazards. It's less play the biggest number and more spatial puzzle. Do you position that enemy near an explosive barrel or push them off the tracks entirely? With around 170 cards to hunt synergies across, and the environment itself acting as a weapon, no two encounters play out the same way. Witch's Apocalyptic Journey. Set in the dying world of Aldrin, developer Meow Alive's Witch's Apocalyptic Journey casts you as a guide to a squad of witches, beings whose very presence signals the world's end. It's a dark, morbidly poetic premise, and thankfully, the deck building underneath backs it up with real depth. Combat runs on standard turn-based roguelite mechanics, but the systems wrapped around it are where this one gets genuinely inventive. The standout feature is the blank card system. Instead of just collecting pre-made cards, you spend truth crystals to craft your own super cards from scratch, freely combining magical effects to build something entirely your own. That alone sets it apart from most deck builders on this list. Then there's the Fate card system, letting you draw and arrange event cards along a timeline to literally plan your witch's route through the apocalypse. Clever combinations can trigger unexpected story branches, rewards, or twists you wouldn't stumble into otherwise. Layer in relics, blessings, 6 playable witches, and up to 4-player online co-op where a fallen ally can be rescued mid-fight. And there's a staggering amount of build variety to dig into. Shards of Order. Developer Fardust made a genuinely bold move with Shards of Order, throwing out the entire foundational rulebook that deck builders have run on since Slay the Spire. No turns, no mana. Instead, every enemy operates on a visible countdown timer, and every single card you play pushes those counters closer to 0. Playing your most powerful ability solves your immediate problem, but it also hands your enemy their next turn faster. That single shift completely changes how you think about every decision. The setting matches that unease perfectly. A dark fantasy world where the ancient laws governing life, death, and identity have been shattered, leaving behind fractured survivors and corpses that simply refuse to stay dead. You lead 3 characters, the soldier, the exile, and the scholar. But here's the real twist. They all share a single deck. Every card you add shifts the draw odds for the entire party, forcing a genuinely tough strategic question. Do you stack the deck to build one dominant hero, or spread the power evenly and keep the whole team viable? Weapons and armor deepen this further, injecting their own unique cards straight into that shared pool, so gear choices double as deck building choices. Vampire Crawlers. When triple BAFTA-winning Ponkel announced a Vampire Survivors spin-off, everyone assumed more bullet heaven chaos. Instead, they delivered a complete genre pivot. Vampire Crawlers takes the frantic, twitchy soul of the original and transplants it, somehow successfully, into a turn-based deck builder. Developed alongside British studio Nosebleed Interactive, it's a genuinely bold swing, and against all odds, it landed at overwhelmingly positive on Steam. You're exploring familiar Vampire Survivors dungeons from an old-school first-person perspective, but combat runs entirely on cards through the proprietary Turbo Turn system, chaining actions within a single turn to build explosive combos that echo the escalating power fantasy the original was famous for. It's a strange hybrid genre called Blobber, blending old-school dungeon crawling with genuine deck-building depth, and the familiar Vampire Survivors monsters aesthetic and DNA carryover in surprisingly satisfying ways. Build busted card synergies, level level up your powers between runs, and unlock new characters and locations at your home base between dungeon dives. Die in the Dungeon. Started as a 2021 Game Jam project, Die in the Dungeon has quietly grown into one of the most inventive dice builders in the genre, and that's genuinely the label Spanish developer Attico uses for it. You're playing as a frog, making your way through a dungeon full of bugs, but instead of a deck of cards, you're managing a bag of dice, rolled and slotted onto a diamond-shaped board where positioning determines everything. The dice themselves aren't your standard 1 through 6 either. With 30 dice types and 14 different properties, you might find a 6-sided die with 3 faces showing the same number, or one packed with blank sides waiting to be modified. Attack dice run red, defense dice blue, healing dice green, and support dice that boost their neighbors show up purple, turning every placement decision into a genuine puzzle rather than a straightforward math problem. Add in over 100 relics and 3 different playable characters, and the build variety gets surprisingly deep for something as simple as dice. Underground Security Inc. Every deck builder on this list puts you on the side of the heroes. Underground Security Inc. flips the script and asks you to root for the dungeon instead. Developed solo by Willis under KRNK Studios, this is a satirical corporate spin on the classic Defend the Dungeon fantasy, where you're not just a monster boss, you're a dungeon manager, answering to demanding shareholders who want to see profit margins go up. The gameplay splits cleanly between night and day. By night, you're assigning minions, everything from skeletons to necromancers, to mine valuable ores, construct traps, and conduct dark rituals to expand your operation. By day, waves of adventuring heroes storm in, trying to liberate your treasure, and it's up to your traps, minion placements, and cast spells to repel them before they clean you out. There's genuine strategic layering here too, blending base building, tower defense, and worker placement mechanics with roguelite deck building elements, through ancient tomes and perk upgrades that reshape your entire dungeon's identity run to run. Maximum Thunderness. From Berserk Studio, the team behind Infernax, comes something completely different in tone. A side-scrolling, co-op action roguelike soaked in cartoon energy. Maximum Thunderness pits you and up to 2 friends against Skull, an alien organization whose grand scheme to conquer Earth apparently involves committing an escalating series of hilariously petty crimes. It's absurd, colorful chaos from the opening frame, and it fully commits to that sugary, cereal-induced fever dream aesthetic the developers promised. The deck building layer sits underneath the frantic beat-em-up bullet hell action, where every subdued alien criminal nets you skills, trinkets, and buildable upgrades that reshape your character's abilities over the course of a run. It's less about careful turn-based planning and more about stacking synergies on the fly while dodging waves of goopy space aliens tanks and mini-bosses in real time. The deck building elements give real structure and progression to what would otherwise be pure arcade mayhem. With online and local co-op support for up to 3 players, it's built to be played loud and with friends screaming at the screen right alongside you. Slay the Spire 2. You can't make a list like this without the game that arguably started the whole genre. Megacrit's original Slay the Spire didn't just popularize roguelike deck builders, it basically wrote the rulebook. Every game on this list is either following or deliberately breaking. 9 years later, the sequel has finally arrived, and set 1,000 years after the original, the Spire has reawakened, hungrier and more dangerous than ever. Rebuilt on the Godot engine with a fresh visual overhaul, Slay the Spire 2 brings back familiar faces like the Ironclad alongside brand new characters, expanding the roster to 5 total planned classes by the end of early access. The biggest structural addition, though, is 4-player co-op, something the original never offered, letting friends climb the Spire together and build genuinely various synergies across separate decks. Megacrit has also tightened the relic economy, making guaranteed energy relics far less common, which forces players to adapt and improvise rather than rely on the same optimized builds every run. It's a small change, but it fundamentally shifts the strategic calculus that longtime fans have had memorized for years. Early access launched to a staggering 500,000 concurrent players, cementing just how much anticipation this sequel carried. It's still evolving, with Megacrit promising up to 2 years of continued development, but the bones here are exactly what fans of the original hoped for: deeper, sharper, and unmistakably Spire. And that wraps up my top 25 deck building indie games of 2026. Let me know down in the comments which one you're adding to your wish list first. I'm genuinely curious which of these caught your eye. And if you enjoyed this list, drop a like, subscribe if you're new here, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next roundup. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.